Have you ever looked at someone's photo and thought to yourself, why does this just feel and look better than mine? Well, a lot of the time the answer is color. And after more than 10 years of photography, I'm talking shooting, editing, and just obsessing over just why some images hit harder than others, I can tell you this. Once I understood just a few simple things about color theory, my photography changed fast. Alright my friend, so color is one of those things that can completely change how a photo feels without changing the photo itself. And that's kind of wild when you come to think about it, because you can take the exact same image and edit it in completely different ways. And suddenly, the photo, it tells a completely different story. One version can feel cold and mysterious, and another one feels warm and nostalgic. Same photo, just totally different feelings. And this is where color theory starts to become actually useful, because color is not just visual, it is also emotional. And that's a part a lot of people miss and overlook. They think color is just about making an image look nice, but really color helps decide how the image feels. Warm tones usually feel more inviting, nostalgic, even alive, while cooler tones can feel distant, quiet, brutal, calm even. It just all depends on how you use them. And then muted color, they often feel soft, subtle, and maybe a bit of moody, while bolder color feels louder, more energetic, and definitely more attention-grabbing. And even though a lot of studies have been made on color science, then none of this has to be super academic. You don't need to stand there with a color wheel in your hand and a slight headache, you know. You just need to start asking, what do I want this image to feel like? Because once you start asking that, color, it just becomes way easier to use. You're not confused and just randomly pushing sliders around in Lightroom or scratching your head while you're out in the wild with your camera and you're surrounded by colors everywhere. You are making choices, my friend. And you're also deciding what emotional direction the image should go in, you know? And once that clicked for me up here in my thick Icelandic brain, both my editing and my photography started to make a lot more sense, because I stopped asking what looks cool and I started asking, what does this image want to feel like? Very theoretical. Of course, making things look cool is good too, but we also need that emotional anchor. However, knowing that color affects mood is really only half of it, because the next question is, why do some images feel beautifully put together while others just kind of feel visually messy, you know? And a lot of that comes down to this next part. By the way, if you want to become a better photographer, then I sent out a free weekly emails. They're short, fun, easy to read, and packed with value. If that sounds interesting to you, then there's a link down in the description and it's totally free. All right, my friends, so this is where color theory starts sounding a bit nerdy, but stay with me, because this part is actually very simple and it's hella useful. You see, some colors that just naturally feel good together, and that's not because of magic, but it's because how they relate to one another. And this is where color harmony comes in. Now, you've probably heard terms like analogous colors, complementary colors, or even monochromatic colors, which sounds slightly intimidating at first, but the basic idea is super simple. Analogous colors are colors that sit next to each other. You can think of blue, cyan, greens, or even like orange, yellows, or reds. They're in the same color spectrum there, you know, very close to each other. Now, the thing with these is that they usually feel calm, natural, and very cohesive, because they all come from the same neighborhood, so to speak. Which basically means that nothing is fighting too hard and everything just feels like it belongs together. Then you got the good old complementary colors. These are on the opposite of each other on the color wheel. You can think about teal and orange, which is obviously one that everybody and their grandma has seen by now and probably a little bit sick of, but the reason it works is simple. Opposites create contrast, and they make each other stand out. Basically, that can make an image feel bolder, more dynamic, and definitely more punchy as well. And the reason teal and orange became so popular is because obviously it works, and it's also a bit natural. If you think about it, when the sun is out in daylight, you have the highlights get lit up by the sun, which is orange, so you get more orange in the highlights, and that cools down the shadows as well, so the shadows get more of a cool tint. and that makes teal and orange. And then you can push it super far if you're a cool YouTuber, you know, especially if you were a YouTuber in the 2016. Now, then we also have something called monochromatic. Basically, that's just one main hue, just in different shades and strengths. And that often feels really clean, controlled, and a bit moody as well. Now, of course, my friend, there are more color schemes than this, and a great tool to check out is Adobe Color, and I recommend that you play around with it and just explore. It's super, super fun. But when you're just starting out, the most important part is not to memorize all of them like you're studying for some weird little color exam. The useful part is just to notice and start noticing the feeling. You see, some color combinations feel very calm, some feel contrasty and loud, and some feel super clean and modern and minimal. And that is honestly the real takeaway, because once you start seeing that, you also start understanding why some images feel visually satisfying straight away. But the thing is, this only really becomes useful once you understand this next bit, because some photos don't feel good just because the colors are nice. They feel good because each color knows its role, so to speak. And that's what honestly changed the entire game for me. My friend, this for me was honestly one of the biggest aha moments, because I used to think that good colors was just about finding the right colors when I'm out in nature. But that's only a part of it. You see, the other part is how much space each color takes up in the frame. And that changes everything. Because even if the colors themselves all are good, if they are all fighting each other and fighting for the amount of attention, the image can start feeling noisy really, really fast. And this is why color balance matters so much. You see, a lot of strong images have one dominant color, and then there's maybe one supporting color. And maybe even there's one small accent color as well. And that's really why ideas like the 70-30 rule can be so useful. It's not strict math, of course, it's just a way of seeing. Maybe 70% of the frame is one dominant color, and that's, doing most of the heavy lifting, and then the other 30% is a secondary color to support it. Or there's also another thing called the 60-30-10 rule. That basically means one dominant color, one supporting color, and then one small color, like accent color, that adds contrast and a point of interest, so to speak. And often that can be the subject if you're a true ninja. For example, my friend Mats Petter Iversen, I'm sure many of you know who he is. He's a really good landscape photographer, and he's also so freaking good at this. He has a lot of photos like this one here, which are just picture perfect examples. What you're looking at is a rapeseed field, blue sky, and a green tree that acts as a subject. 3 colors, blue, yellow, and green. So simple, so clean, and just so freaking beautiful. Now, important note here, it does not have to be exact percentages, of course. You shouldn't be sitting there measuring pixels like a psychopath. It's just that the principle is insanely useful. One color leads, one color helps, and one color you can add to get a little kick, And once you start looking at the photo this way, you realize something super important. Good color is often not about having loads of different colors. It's about giving each color a clear role. What is leading the frame? What is supporting it? What little accent is adding life without taking over? Oh, photography becomes so beautiful when we start thinking like this. Pretty. And honestly, when you get this right, the whole image just feels a lot cleaner and more deliberate. I'm starting to learn them cool English words. Deliberate, And keep in mind that this, of course, matters both when you're shooting and you're out in the field, and also when you're home editing or in your editing booth doing them edits. Because once you know which color should lead, editing becomes so much easier as well. Because now you're not just trying to make everything pop, you're trying to make the right thing lead. And that brings us to the next part, where a lot of people accidentally ruin good colors. All right, my friend. So this is where a lot of people mess it all up. Because when I edit myself, the first thing I do is not just to dive headfirst into the sliders. Even though I most of the time shoot like with the final edit in mind, as I do often, I still stop for a second and just ask myself, what do I want this photo to feel like? Because by doing so, it gives me a direction. And now I'm not just shoving sliders around and hoping that it looks cool. I'm making choices that support that feeling and the look that I'm going for. And by the way, I'm not sitting there for 40 minutes staring at the photos, trying to unlock the secrets of the universe or something like that. It's just a few seconds and just enough to get a general sense of where I want to take the edit. And honestly, that tiny pause, it makes a massive difference because now you're not editing blindly, you are editing on purpose. My friend, try it out and let me know how it works for you. And by the way, this is actually a big part of what I teach inside of my Lightroom Masterclass. There is a full module in there just on color theory for photographers, but the whole course is built to be simple, practical, and actually fun to watch. I mean, this thing is based on 10 years of editing experience, and the goal is not just to show you how to move the sliders like a professional, but how to think like an editor too. So you understand not just the how, but also the why behind your decisions. At the time of the recording, more than 600 photographers have gone through it now, and the response has been absolutely amazing. So if that sounds useful to you, then there's a link down in the description. Now for me, usually the goal with editing is to bring out some sort of an emotion, and of course also make the photo look mighty fine, you know? But honestly, what I'm trying to do, I'm trying to bring back the feeling I had when I took the photo in the first place. Like this photo right here. I shot this on a lake close to where I live here, and it was a cold, late autumn morning. And it was also foggy, quiet, and just super eerie, kind of spooky, you know? So when I sat down and edited the photo, I did not want to warm it up and make it feel cozy. That would have kind of killed the mood. So instead, I leaned into the cold. I cooled it down, I kept it restrained, and I tried to hold on to that mysterious feeling. And that is also where all of that other stuff that we talked about comes back in, because when I'm editing, I'm still thinking about the color balance. Questions like, do I have one color leading? Is there a psychedelic color supporting it? Or is there maybe a random color that is pulling too much attention for no reason at all? Now, sometimes that means that I need to desaturate one color while boosting another. And sometimes that means that I might have to shift the hue a little so the palette just feels cleaner. And if the photo allows for it, then the color wheels can be absolutely amazing to create bit of color separation too, or going for analog or monochromatic or whatever, because it allows us to push in tones and colors into the shadows, midtones, and highlights in a really, really, really amazing way. Now, the idea, of course, is not to force some weird look that doesn't belong there, but to support the mood that's already in the frame. And that's really the whole point. Good color editing is not about making the image more colorful, it's about making it feel more intentional. Because in the end, knowing color theory is one thing, but actually making it show up in the way that you shoot is another. And that part usually comes down to habits. I'm talking about the small things you repeat over and over until better photos starts becoming second nature. So if you want this video right here to fully make sense in practice, watch this video next. 10 habits that silently transforms your photography in 2026.